So there's a way to make this happen. There's a way to integrate. There's a way to harmonize. And there's a way to evolve.
Right.
And I guarantee you that there will be good things that come out of that, even though it will be challenging in certain ways.
Healthy relationships, successful relationships do not have to be about compromise. As a matter of fact, when you recognize the lie in that, you recognize that people who have low self-belief are the people who say those things. Conscious couples, business partners, and singles committed to attracting their dream partner. Welcome to the Conscious Couples podcast, where we share our life, love story, and combined relationship expertise to help you create and consistently cultivate the most magnificent, intimate relationship possible.
Never again will you feel hopeless and alone in your intimate relationship challenges.
Having accumulated thousands of hours coaching conscious couples and individuals all over the world, as well as starting and growing a global business together, Alan and I are here to guide you in all things relationships.
Thank you again for tuning into the one place where it's not about you or me, it's about the we. Conscious couples and individuals from all over the world, welcome back to the Conscious Couples podcast. For all things love. This is episode number 32. Is compromise a lie? Interesting. Before we jump into this episode, I just want to give a shout out to the Next Level Podcast Solutions team over at Next Level University. Thank you so much for being so damn awesome. So as always, we want to do ladies first here. Sweetheart, you have an intention for this episode. This episode was your idea. Lay it on us.
So my intention for this episode is for everyone who's listening to evolve what a successful relationship means to them. Trash out the old stuff, bring in the new, evolve what relationships, and a successful one at that, what that means to you.
Very fitting considering you are a part of Evolve Ventures.
I am the CEO and founder of Evolve Ventures, so it does make a lot of sense.
So you believe in positive change?
I really believe not only in positive change, but like in actual evolution, transformation on an nth degree. So I'm excited for our listeners to get that.
Okay, sounds good. Are you going to kick it over to me for
so
a story?
Anyways, you have a great example, so let me kick that back on over.
Sounds good. My sweetheart. All right, so Emilia and I, last weekend or 2 weekends ago, I honestly forget. I think it was 2 weekends ago. We went to Kevin and Taryn's Happily Ever After party.
Oh, yeah.
Which was awesome.
Happily Ever After.
Happily Ever After. I may or may not have bawled my eyes out during the first dance.
It's adorable.
Yeah, it was. It was good. Luckily, Matt was there for me with some tissues. He tossed them to me through his suit, which was nice.
I didn't see that.
Yeah.
Oh, go you, Matt.
Yeah, it was nice. He's like, I came prepared. He snuck the tissues for me.
I love that.
But we had a bunch of conversations with a bunch of different people. There was yard games. It was actually an awesome gathering at a vineyard. Beautiful day, and Emilia always likes to ask questions to people, and so we were talking to this man. He's awesome, and he is currently celebrating his 20th marriage anniversary. And whenever people tell us about a success that they have had, we always like to celebrate them.
Always.
And ask them questions about it because we want to help understand it.
Yeah.
You know? And so you asked a question that I knew you'd ask, which was, in 20 years, holy crap, what is one thing, what's the most important thing that you've learned?
About yourself.
About yourself. And about marriage in these 20 years. And he thought about it for a little while, and he said, marriage is about compromise. And while to each their own, both Emilia and I unpacked that on the way home, and we both do disagree. And while I understand why people say that, you have to compromise, I've heard that my whole life as well.
Same.
But I never really agreed. And so this episode is kind of a myth-busting, it's a hard word to say, myth-busting episode about whether or not you really do need to compromise in your relationship. Because when it comes to core aspirations, core values, and core beliefs, should you have to compromise those things? I would argue no, you shouldn't have to. But what we believe in instead of compromise is integration, evolution. I put harmonization. I don't even know if it's a word.
It is.
It is a word.
Very
okay,
strong one.
So integrate, harmonize, and evolve is where I wanted to go. But what is your take, love?
Yeah, so I'm so grateful that this was brought to the surface, because we really did afterwards unpack, and you can tell it was hard for me to, because I have so much respect for this man and this couple. I have so much respect for them, so much love for them.
Same.
It was really hard for me to kind of just kind of hang in that moment and not continue to ask questions. And in hindsight, I could have actually learned even more if I like asked questions, not necessarily things that could have benefited me per se, but rather like, what is the thought process underneath that? And when I heard that, it was almost like another arrow to my heart of like, if you could imagine someone like just like taking a bow and arrow, like Katniss Everdeen from the Hunger Games, like just shooting them right there in the heart. It was like another arrow in the heart of like, here's another example of someone who is going to sum up so many incredible years in terms of the secret of that, right? Into a word that when you actually look at the word itself, that means that there's a concession on both ends. And what that actually means is like, it's not like a win-win-win. It's actually a win-loss in some situations. So like, for example, a concession is where someone actually like, they don't actually bring to the table what they initially believed in or thought or valued. Instead, they kind of put that in their pocket or slipped it underneath the rug in order for things to be like okay, to be kosher, to like whatever it is, you know. And I think that like just was really hard for me to hear, because I do really believe, just like you love, in harmonization and integration, and not having to sacrifice what you love, what you care about, and what you value in order to be with someone, and in order to have a successful, healthy, positive, and encouraging and highly influential relationship. And so to my intention, I want to really evolve what this definition of love and successful relationships looks like to us, because I know if you and I have heard it to the extent that we have, I know that there's thousands of people out there that have been kind of had this belief shoved down their throats in that marriage and relationships is about compromise.
That it's about that, as if you can't be your full self in a relationship, and that you're going to have to compromise who you are and who you aspire to be in order to be in a relationship.
Yep.
I could not disagree more, and I'm grateful we're talking about this. So, sweetheart, in the past, would you be willing to share an area of your life, or an area of yourself, more importantly, that you compromised and you wished that you hadn't?
I love that you're putting me on the spot, because we're really like helping that brain that gets the good REM sleep work. So yeah, so I think that understanding, okay, so when I subscribe to this belief, right, that healthy relationships, successful relationships relied upon compromise in order to be healthy and successful. When I subscribed, again, and I use that word.
Did you subscribe to that?
At some point I did, of course, obviously, otherwise I wouldn't have been with anyone that I felt as though I couldn't be my full self with. Right. And so like, and now I'm in, you know, like the only relationship in my entire life where I actually don't feel as though that I need to do that at all. There's no subscription to that. It's like I hit the unsubscribe from Netflix, right? So to this belief system, an example of that would be like, I freaking love learning. And in so many of my past relationships, when I was under the belief that you need to compromise in order to have a healthy and successful relationship, when I wanted to maybe read a book at night instead of like watch a show or get intimate or, I don't know, go to like a friend's house or go to like a bonfire or whatever, instead of like me wanting to like nerd out and read a book or just to have like R&R time, what I did was I compromised. So it was like, okay, well, let me kind of put your needs above mine, because like I need to sacrifice these little parts of me that I actually really value to make this relationship actually healthy and happy, quote unquote. And that subscription to that belief system, because in many ways that was told to me, it actually put me so far off the train tracks of what I genuinely deeply believe, which is, you know, you don't have to subscribe to that. Healthy relationships, successful relationships do not have to be about compromise. As a matter of fact, when you recognize the lie in that, you recognize that people who have low self-belief are the people who say those things. And while I'm not calling out this one individual that we kind of, you know, talked about, I do in hindsight see a huge pattern here.
Well, if there was a growth mindset, and we're doing an event on growth mindset versus fixed mindset on Thursday, by the way, so it would have happened by the time you listen to this episode, but so we did that event.
Right.
And in this case, I wrote a post about it today, babe. A fixed mindset is a deep belief that people either don't change, won't change, or can't change.
Yeah.
And a growth mindset is a deep belief that you can change and improve if you want to. And so if you have a growth mindset in your relationship, you'll believe that you don't have to compromise. You can integrate, or you can harmonize, or you can go and do that thing solo and then come back into your relationship in alignment.
Yeah.
And I think that to you and I's point here, I do believe that people who say things like that typically grew up in an environment with a fixed mindset or still have a fixed mindset. And remember, that doesn't mean they have a fixed mindset about everything. It just means that in this instance, that's probably the case.
For sure. Yeah. Well said. And you know, historically looking back at all my relationships, I was definitely, whenever I subscribed to that or believed in that belief where like, okay, this, like I had to compromise a part of myself or something that I valued to just kind of keep things smooth in the relationship. Hindsight's 2020. Each partner had a fixed mindset either in totality or a fixed mindset in a specific area of their life that I had to kind of compromise my growth mindset or my whatever I was in that regard for things to kind of, if you will, to kind of like not force them to grow with me. And my gosh, that's one of the biggest things that I am. So in a way, I tucked away so many things about me.
Thank you for sharing that, honey. I know that was vulnerable.
Oh, good, love.
So as Emilia's partner, I just want to speak to our listeners, frankly, directly here. It is my aspiration to make it so that our relationship is so good that she never has to compromise who she is in any way. I don't want you to have to compromise who you are. That is not a successful relationship.
Right.
And I also definitely don't want to compromise who I am, which I also have been guilty of in the past. And I think that that's what compromise is. It's, okay, let me change myself in a way that I don't actually want to. There's a big difference between I want to improve because I want to, and I want to change because I want to, versus, and here's a funny little story about that. I remember Emilia and I, at the beginning of our relationship, we decided to eat a little healthier. And we were like, okay, we're going to quit fast food. So we did it. Yeah, we did it for like a month. And I went to Dunkin' Donuts, and I ended up sharing with her in one of my gratitudes. We used to do audio gratitudes back then that I was eating donuts, that I had donuts. And she's like, just out of curiosity, and by the way, it's okay, I just want to know, like, is Dunkin' Donuts not fast food? Or I'm like, it's a loose definition of fast food. No, what I ended up telling her was the truth. I said, sweetheart, to be honest with you, I wanted to do that, and I realized that I don't want to do that. I used to drive to the studio all the time. Fast food is convenient. I know the macros. It's New England. There's not a lot of healthy options that are quick. And so I have 1,000 reasons why. I was like, honestly, I don't want to quit fast food right this moment.
Yeah.
A little over a year and a half ago, I attended my first relationship call with Alan and Emilia. And as a single mother, I was very curious what I was actually going to be able to take away from it. I was very blown away with how deep we could actually go in that first session alone. It really opened the doors and opened my eyes to a lot of my patterning and wounding around relationships. Through attending some of their live events and through work with them, I have really grown in confidence, in learning how to love and show up for myself, which has been huge. And it's really set the bar high when in terms of standards for relationships and what I desire and need out of a relationship. They very much practice what they preach, and it's so nice to see people working consciously on relationships. Again, it's really set the bar high for what I look for and what I desire in a relationship. So I'm super grateful to be able to learn and grow from them and be a part of this community.
And so anyways, that's a good example of something I didn't want to compromise. And I don't have to.
No,
I don't have to do that. If I want to do that for my own good health, that's great. But Emilia is not going to say you have to do that.
Never.
And so that's what this is about, is hopefully if you're out there watching or listening to this, you don't feel like you have to compromise who you are and what you want and what you value and what you aspire to make your relationship work. I would argue that it's actually the opposite. The relationship that is what's best for you is the one that you get to be your full aligned self, and you don't have to compromise who you are.
Right.
And that's kind of the thesis that we have for this episode.
For sure. And the only thing that I would add to this is the fact that, like, when you feel as though you have to compromise, like, just like be mindful of the fact that you're starting to subscribe to that belief. And it's probably because you might not have belief in your relationship that it can grow, in which case, like, a tool that I would suggest our listeners kind of take away in this is like, I'm feeling as though I need to compromise what I value here. And so, like, for you, for that Dunkin' Donuts example, it was like, in that, if we could swap out those words of like, I don't want to,
yeah,
you never need to justify. I really want to make sure that I emphasize that for our listeners. Like, you never should feel as though you need to justify who you are, what you value, what you believe, etc., especially to your safest place, which should be your partner.
Although, if Emilia was curious as to why, from a learning perspective, and that's the key, because I did unpack the whys under it.
Right.
The studio, commuting back and forth, macros, it's convenient. So that wasn't like, I have to justify this.
Never.
That was, she is curious as to actually why. And the carbs, the quick carbs for pre-gym and stuff like that.
And I
Dunkin'
learned so
Donuts
much
right
from
next
that
to our
afterwards.
There was a Dunkin' Donuts right next to our gym, and
Yeah.
I used to get us some carbs before the gym, pre-gym carbs, simple sugars, glycogen. There's a bunch underneath that. But while some people have to justify who they are, some people actually just want to understand who you are. And so in the beginning of our relationship, Emilia would ask me all these really intimate questions about why I do what I do, because she wants to learn. And I would get a little bit defensive of like, well, thinking I have to justify who I am. And you'd always stop me and say, you don't have to justify who you are. I genuinely am curious. I really just want to know you.
Ooh, well, that's a great example, because whenever someone does feel as though they have to justify, it's probably because they've had a lot of run-ins in the past with people who actually aren't interested in learning.
And who wanted them to compromise. And for like talking about growth and fixed mindset, you probably was up against a lot of in the past fixed mindset, people that didn't believe in their ability to grow or evolve with you as their partner. And therefore you always felt like you had to justify and defend your quote unquote values. Right.
And so, like, to our listeners, if you feel as though you have to compromise, okay, recognize, do you feel as though you have to justify what you have to compromise? I like this because, and is it a because that you're kind of going into because your partner is making, like, is kind of putting up the boundaries around like, well, you have to tell me why, or I'm backing you into this corner to justify what you are, instead of like, no, I'm genuinely interested and learning like what this is or what this means to you, or, you know, like, there's a big difference there. And I think that to this point, compromise being such a lie from my perspective, it really comes down to, okay, are you willing to courageously integrate? And one of the things about relationships is, because it is so intimate, you kind of face that moment where you feel as though you might have to justify, or you might have to explain, you know, and there's this concept of mansplaining, which essentially, like, so many women feel as though they need to over explain themselves to men, because men, historically speaking, and this is why this kind of mansplaining,
I've never even heard of it, so this is new for me.
Well, it's a
What's
theme.
mansplaining?
It's like, because guys aren't actually like curious, or because they're not really interested in the answer. It's traditionally speaking, like, women feel as though they need to justify or over explain things in order to get any ridiculously close to what they want or whatnot. And so it's like, and there's many different perspectives on that, but like, when that happens, there's a thought process that like men don't think that women understand things. So men will actually over explain what they mean to women. And kind of in a sense, just to peel that layer back, is because like they don't necessarily think people on the other end of that, especially women, understand what they mean. So when it comes to, if you feel like you're like over explaining, or if you're
over justifying,
just realize that, okay, that's where you're probably meeting someone with a fixed mindset, or someone that has low self-belief. And if it's in your relationship, where I think you can navigate or evolve into, is that this is going for a win-win-win situation, where not only the you, both of them win. So I win, you win, but also the relationship wins as a result, because you don't have to break off pieces of who you are to be in this relationship. When you can courageously and vulnerably express what your needs are effectively, what your values, your beliefs, and your aspirations are, that is absolutely everything. And when you can vulnerably do that and bring that into a relationship, and then both sides, okay, how can we integrate this to make the we, you know, made up of that, that is absolutely everything. And a compromise definitely does not look like that. So that's all I got in this episode, love.
Fire. I'll give a tangible example recently that I think will land for everybody. So Emilia came to me once. We were on a walk with little Tucker the other night, and she said something along the lines of, I feel like because we're so consistent and so disciplined in our businesses that we can't go travel for longer than a weekend.
Right.
And I feel like I need something that's a little more than like 3 or 4 days on a weekend. And we talked about it, and I eventually said, well, I would need to be home on Monday to record the episodes in the studio with the high audio quality, because we just came off of our highest month of 24,000 listens, which is really, really cool. And audio quality is one of our important things. If you've ever been on YouTube and seen me moving the mic for Emilia, it's always because I want to make sure that we have the highest audio quality. But anyways, so what I said is what we could do is leave on a Tuesday morning and then do Tuesday to Sunday, and then that way I can be back for Marathon Monday, which is recording.
Right.
That's a perfect example of Emilia not compromising who she is and saying that I feel like I really need this every now and then.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be all the time, but can we do that at least once a year type of thing? And so we had a discussion. And if I had a fixed mindset, I would have had to shut that down and be like, no, there's no way we can make that work.
I would have felt like I had to justify.
Exactly. And instead what I did is I said, sweetheart, with these online businesses and consistency so important, and I'm not in a place necessarily where everything's fully automated yet, and it never fully will be, but more so than it is right now, because we're still only 5 years in, it would just need to be a place that has good Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
And so Wi-Fi is important to me. Staying consistent in my business is important to me. Emilia, nature is very important to her.
Yeah.
And a longer than what we call as a boomerang. A boomerang is just going away for a weekend versus like a longer period of time.
Right.
So there's a way to make this happen. There's a way to integrate. There's a way to harmonize. And there's a way to evolve.
Right.
And I guarantee you that there will be good things that come out of that, even though it will be challenging in certain ways. And I think that's really something that can sum up this episode, which is Emilia came with her perspective instead of suppressing her truth. And then we integrated and harmonized so that we can both have a win-win-win, a win for the we, a win for me, and a win for her, where we still have Wi-Fi. We're still home on Monday with high audio quality with our audio in the studio. But we also have now 6-day vacation that we can do.
Well, it would never really be a vacation because we're integrating. But like, I see what you're saying.
But yeah, it would be an adventure that's longer than 3 or 4 days.
Yeah.
Which is the point of this whole thing,
baby.
right? So otherwise you'd have to feel like you have to compromise who you are and what you want to do.
Very true.
Right? And that's not what I want. So
Great example.
there's always...
That was vulnerable for me to say too.
Yeah, definitely.
I know. And I think that's kind of to this integration and harmonization and evolution, like all of that is possible for every one of our listeners. But the thing is, like, it does take a vulnerable moment.
Always.
And I'm
courageous.
I'm so grateful for you because you held that scary space that I was cultivating and nervous to talk about. You held that space, you actively listened, and you said, okay, well, let's put our minds together. It might not be perfect, but like, okay, let's try to integrate. And I'm really grateful for that. So hopefully all of our listeners feel as though they have that in their relationship. And if they don't feel that at least they have hope from this episode that they can work towards that, or put this episode on with their partner and say, hey, I don't really feel like we do a great job at this yet, but I believe in our ability as a couple to work towards this.
I had a intimate relationship once where it was early in my entrepreneurial journey, and she wanted me to go away for 14 days to a place that had no Wi-Fi.
Oh, wow.
And I had a team and an online business that really, I wasn't at a stage where I can take 14 days off. That's not, if you're an early entrepreneur, you know what I'm saying. If you're not, you don't know what I'm saying, but trust me. And with the level of goals and dreams that we had set, Kevin and I, there's no way that I'm going to be able to make that work. And she wasn't necessarily willing to compromise and actually get good Wi-Fi at that place. So again, I don't want to be mean to that person. I just want everyone to know that I ended up leaving that relationship because I could not compromise my goals and dreams.
Yeah.
I couldn't.
There's no integration.
Yeah, there was no integration. And I realized there's no way this is going to integrate because what she values is in direct conflict with what I value, and we're going to have to go our separate ways. And so that is a possibility too. Yeah. If you're out there watching or listening, that is a possibility. And I'm so grateful that I chose that option. Thank goodness, because now I'm in a relationship that I don't have to compromise who I am. And so this is a powerful thing. Okay, we got to jump. So that was episode 32. Is compromise a lie? I would say, yeah. Integrate, harmonize, evolve. Okay, so on October 13th, we have our next RT event, Building Lasting Trust in Your Relationship. There's going to be 7 fundamentals that Emilia and I are going to bring in about how to build trust in your relationship, which is the foundation, quite frankly, of everything. That's at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you'd like to register, please click the link in the show notes, and we cannot wait to meet you.
Also, if this is something, if you feel as though you're compromising in your relationship right now, and you feel as though, and maybe from this episode, you're realizing that you've actually started to subscribe to this, that compromise is actually the key to relationship, or you have subscribed in the past and you want help kind of rooting this belief up and unsubscribing, hitting that unsubscribe button, or if you just need a safe place to talk about this stuff, because we simply do not talk about relationships and all of this stuff that is so close and near and dear to our hearts so deeply, you know, we don't talk about it enough. And so if you want a free, safe space where there's absolutely no judgment, 2 people that can help you in this regard and whatever you're struggling with, we're not going to sell you on anything. It's completely private. It's free. The link is also in the bio here. Every single Saturday, Alan and I love meeting our listeners. So we want to make sure that we dedicate a half hour. We call it Service Saturday, to meet anyone that might be out there listening to us that is struggling in this capacity, because we've been there and we know what it's like. And we just want to be able to be that helpful ear if you need to kind of vent in this regard, and just know that we are here to help you. And Service Saturday is here and designed for each one of our listeners. So please take advantage of that. We'd love to meet you. That's all I got.
You are not going to improve something that you never talk about. Join us, talk about it, innovate it, improve it. It's going to be great. We hope to meet you soon. As always, it's not about me or you. It's about the we. We'll talk to you next time.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for joining us for another episode of the Conscious Couples podcast. We love connecting with the Conscious Couples community, so please make sure you follow us on Instagram. I am at Evolve with Emilia, and Alan is Lazaros88.
Also, if you or your partner resonated with this episode, leave us a review at the link in the show notes, and please share this with someone you love and care about.
Until next time, remember, it's not about you or me. It's about
the we.